The night the moon above V's Dothrak swelled full and red. A breath of wind slipped between the felt walls of Khal Drogo's great tent, carrying with it the scent of horse sweat and distant fires. Daenerys Targaryen, blood of the dragon, Khaleesi of the vast Khalasar, knelt beside the low pallet where her lord husband lay. Weeks earlier, the magic of Mirri Maz Duur had left him hovering between life and death, a shell stripped of spirit. Yet tonight, the amber glow of the braziers caught the gleam of perspiration on his brow, and his once dull eyes stirred beneath their lids, as though dreaming of endless grass and the thunder of hooves. Dany's own heart hammered. She pressed a damp cloth to his lips, whispering soft Valyrian prayers she had learned at her brother's knee in the narrow courtyards of Pentos. When she glanced up, Jorah Mormont stood in the doorway. His broad shoulders cast a shadow across the rugs, and the torch in his gauntlet trembled. He breathes deeper, she said, voice barely louder than the crackle of coals. Khaleesi, Jorah murmured, hope mingled with caution. Mirri swore no life could be coaxed back. Mirri is a liar. Dany stroked Drogo's braids, the bells sewn through them chiming softly. She thought me a child. She misjudged the dragon within my blood, and his. She felt it then. A twitch of the Khal's fingers, a rasp of breath that was fuller, richer. Drogo's eyelids lifted, revealing eyes like molten obsidian flickering to life. He gazed at her, as though awakening from a storm-tossed dream. Recognition flared, and when he spoke, his voice was cracked leather yet unmistakably, the voice that had once commanded 10,000 riders. Moon of my life, he croaked in Dothraki. Tears blurred Dany's vision. She leaned forward, her silver-pale hair spilling over his shoulder. My sun and stars. Behind her, Jorah exhaled a prayer to gods he no longer served. Outside, the restless horses stamped as though the world itself felt a subtle shift. Somewhere beneath the ground, the future howled like a newborn. The Khalasar's rejoicing shook the mother of mountains. Fires leaped skyward, drums rumbled, and riders raced in wild circles around the holy lake. When Drogo rose from his sickbed, leaner perhaps, but fierce as ever, he summoned his blood riders to the sacred fires. They knelt, touching foreheads to earth, and when they looked up, the flames gleamed in eyes filled with awe. Kohalo, his whip-thin braid adorned with a new silver bell to mark the night, spoke first. A man cannot die if his spirit is made of sky iron. The great stallion has tested our Khal and found him unbroken. Koto, scarred and brutal, thumped a broad chest. This is sign enough. The stallion who mounts the world rides again. Drogo's gaze slid past them to Daenerys, who stood cloaked in flowing indigo silk, silver hair bright as fresh fallen snow against the night. Around her shoulders clung a trio of sleeping dragons, Regal, Viserion and Drogon, each no larger than a house cat yet already restless with hidden fire. Drogo spoke to the sea of warriors, but his rough voice carried words forged in council with his queen. I rode the Shadowlands and returned. I saw a stallion of burning scale and molten bone. He carried me to the far side of the Black Waters and showed me an iron land full of sheep and pale riders. My blood screamed for conquest. Bendaba once. A roar broke from the gathered Khalasar, hooves pounding, blades scraping shields. Yet Drogo raised a single scar-furrowed hand, and silence fell swift as the desert night. That iron land is called Westeros, he went on. Its throne is forged of swords our enemies cannot wield. My moon of my life carries the right of blood to that throne. The stallion who mounts the world will see us there. Daenerys stepped forward, voice clear. Westeros is mine by birth, yet I will not take it alone. The blood of the dragon joins with the heart of the stallion. Together we shall break the chains of 7 kingdoms. Her dragons hissed, tufts of smoke curling from their nostrils. The air vibrated, and the oldest of the crones bowed low. In that moment, Dany felt the first rumble of destiny. The step of 10,000 hoofbeats echoing across oceans. Preparation consumed moons. Vast plains shook beneath drills. Herds were gathered, wagons loaded with fermented mare's milk and salted goat. The great Khalasar splintered into vanguards and supply tails, each under sworn blood riders who carved horsehead sigils into hardwood planks, destined to become deck rails of ships not yet built. Illyrio Mopatis arrived from Pentos with 12 sleek galleys and a promise of 20 more. His orange silk robe bulged around the unavoidable rotundity of him, yet his eyes shone gold as the fat rings on his fingers. He knelt in warm, perfumed dust before the Khal and Khaleesi, bowing so low his jowls jiggled. "Ever have I served House Targaryen," he declared. "Now I bring timber from the Summer Isles and shipwrights from Korth. Fair wages, paid of course, in promises of future trade." Drogo stared at the Magister as though deciding whether to cleave him in twain. Daenerys laid a placid hand upon her husband's bare arm. "We shall remember Pentos," she said. Her tone was gentle as rain, yet her violet eyes glimmered with hard resolve that made Illyrio swallow. Ships rose along the riverbanks like leviathans of oiled pine. Dothraki riders, uncomfortable with water, spent days walking the decks, learning which ropes bit hardest, which sails fought the wind. Arak blades were reforged into narrower cutlasses. Long ashes were fashioned into bows of hornwood flexed against quivers of ash-fletched arrows. Dany oversaw each forge in the makeshift foundry. Sweat slicked her collarbones as she leaned near the smith's hissing steel, pointing out the curvature of scythes sharp enough to shear mail. She recalled Viserys' endless tales, of castle walls that bristled like porcupines, of knights sheathed head to toe in steel. Foolish as her brother had been, his boasts were maps folded into her memory. She honed each one into strategy. At night she studied by lamplight with Ser Jorah. He traced the coastline of Westeros onto rough parchment. "Landfall in Dorne satisfies your rider's thirst for heat, Khaleesi, but the sands stretch wide. Supplies may wither before we reach fertile reachlands." She sipped sour wine, scanning the inky scribble of mountain passes. Dorne's princes love to watch lions trample one another. She mused. "Let us skirt Sunspear while they weigh which dragon to follow. And then?" Jorah leaned forward. "Crack the heart of the realm," she replied, tapping the painted mouth of Blackwater Bay. "But only once the Riverlords rise against their king. They despise Lannister gold yet fear its armies. We must gift them a reason to turn." Across the brazier, Drogo watched the map as one watches a restless beast, marking places where hooves might run swift. When Dany spoke of the trident, his eyes narrowed, and he nodded, remembering Viserys' tales of another dragon prince who had died there. Jorah dared voice a whisper none else would. "If Robert Baratheon dies before our sails appear on the horizon, the realm fractures in civil quarrel." Dany thought of the usurper's wine-flushed face, the white of his teeth when he laughed at her father's death. "Robert Baratheon will die," she said evenly. "Whether by hunting accident or mummer's rumor, he will die." The night swallowed her vow. In King's Landing, ravens carried grim tidings. The Khalasar massed near Slaver's Bay, bending foreign ships to their will. But the court drowned rumor under the clatter of tournaments and the clink of gold. Robert Baratheon drank. Cersei Lannister schemed, and Eddard Stark, still alive, still hand, watched the slow rot setting in like frost on summer grass. One dusk, Ned stood upon the ramparts with the dull roar of the city sweeping up from the streets. Varys' words echoed at his shoulder. "A horde beyond count, my lord. And a queen who wakes dragons." "Children's tales," Robert had bellowed earlier, cuffing Ned's arm. "Let them come. I'll gut their horses and feed the meat to my dogs. Then them die." But Ned had seen too many battlefields to sneer. Across 6,000 leagues, a desert storm gathered, and its first winds prickled the hairs at the back of his neck. On the day the Khalasar departed V's Dothrak, the dawn sky blazed crimson. Drogo rode at the head upon his war stallion, its mane woven with red ribbons. Dany rode beside him upon a slim Palomino mare, the three dragons circling overhead in swooping arcs of bronze, emerald, and jet. Beneath her silk riding cloak, she felt Drogon's distant crackle. a hunger for open sky. For prey, tens of thousands followed. Horse lords in patterned vests, women archers with curved knives at their belts, children balanced before saddles. Wagons groaned under tents and grain. Each hoofbeat hammered the dust flat until it rose no more. Only a single river of resolve flowing west. They reached the edge of the Rhoyne before sunset on the 30th day. Smoke from the forges laced the air. The half-finished hulls now floated, mastless but eager for wind. Illyria waddled about, directing slaves in bright scarfs. The Dothraki eyed the gleaming water uneasily, but Drogo laughed and slapped the man on the back hard enough to make his fat belly wobble. "Water cannot drown a storm," he declared. "And what is a khalasar but thunder that learned to gallop?" Dany sensed the rider's fear like taut bowstrings. She called her dragons down, letting them perch among the high rigging. Flames licked from their jaws, sparks raining harmlessly into the river. The sight transfixed every pair of eyes. "Behold!" she shouted in Dothraki. "Sky and water obey dragonfire alike. If the little gods wish to drown us, we shall boil their seas." A great shout rose. Riders surged forward, pushing trembling horses onto the plank bridges. The first beasts balked, nostrils flaring, but soon one stallion stepped aboard and found the deck solid under steel-shod hooves. The rest followed, led by laughter and snapping whips. Night fell with tangled ropes and the cries of oarmen testing benches. Dany stood at the prow of the flagship, the Balerion, Illyria's indulgent gesture, and watched lanterns bob across black water. Behind her, Drogo approached, the reek of horse and sweat giving way to the faint scent of myrrh he had taken to wearing only for her. "You are the iron in their spines," he said, low, "and you are the storm in their hearts." She replied. He drew her against him, his chest a wall of scar-puckered muscle. She felt the steady rhythm of his pulse, each beat an echo of hoof and drum. Together they stared toward the unseen horizon, where a continent slept beneath complacent stars. The crossing endured 40 days of salt spray and violent tempests. Horses screamed in holds, men vomited between planks, and more than one vessel succumbed to a rogue wave. Yet the dragons, now grown to the size of dogs, soared above the fleet when the skies cleared, their broad wings drawing arcs of shadow across the sails. Sailors cowered, muttering prayers to gods old and new. Dothraki riders watched with a reverence bordering on worship. Stormbreak Point emerged at twilight, jagged rocks spearing out of mist like teeth. The Balerion skirted treacherous shoals, while other ships anchored in coves north and south. Scouts rowed low boats to sandy stretches where dunes met gnarled pine. Dorne's lonely eastern marches seldom patrolled. Daenerys took first step ashore, wet sand clutching calf-high boots. She knelt, pressed her palm flat. "7 kingdoms," she whispered. The grains smelled of cedar and brine, nothing like the red wastes. But her soul shivered with belonging. Drogo's stallion splashed through the shallows behind her. He raised his curved arak high, letting the dying sun paint its edge blood red. "The Dragon Queen names this land," he proclaimed. The words were Dothraki yet resonated against cliffs ancient as the first men. Within an hour, fires flickered between stones. Goat was spitted and turned, horsehides spread to dry. Sentries ranged under moonlight, eyes peeled for Dornish outriders. The wind carried the perfume of orange groves, distant inland, and hints of smoke from villages whose inhabitants now whispered that ghosts walked the shore. Daenerys met with her Khal in a ring of driftwood staves. Jorah, Quaro, and Rakaro knelt inside, tracing lines in damp sand. "We strike swift," Quaro urged. "Take their horses, burn those who resist." Dany's gaze lingered northward where dunes melted into shadows. "No," she decided. "We ride for Vaeth, show them the might that crossed their water. But we do not slaughter the small folk. We need their mouths to spread tales." Jorah nodded, lips tight. "Fear buys silence, Khaleesi. Wonder buys allegiance. Let them see dragons at dawn." Drogo smirked. "When the first town bends the knee, The next will tremble before we appear. By daybreak, 3 dragons banked above dunes painted rose by sunrise. They screeched, exhaling thin gouts of flame that singed tufted grasses. Behind them, the Khalasar thundered in columns stretching beyond sight. Banners of horsehair streamed, and over every head shimmered the promise of conquest. Vaith's mud brick walls crumbled under a single blast of dragonfire. The city's guards, toothless sellswords in faded cloaks, fled before the gates blackened. Sandstealers surrendered with raised palms, kneeling as riders swept through narrow streets. Children gawped at the silver-haired queen atop her golden mare. Dragons coiled around her shoulders like living jewels. Daenerys spared temples and wells, posted 200 riders to maintain order, and gathered the city's elders in the plaza. "I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen," she proclaimed in High Valyrian. Words translated beside her into the harsh Dornish tongue by a Pentashi interpreter. "I claim your loyalty and offer protection in return." Old men bowed until foreheads kissed flagstones hot enough to blister. The women presented tokens: woven baskets of dates, garlands of desert roses, slender vials of fragrant oil. In return, Dany left them grain enough to outlast winter, and a single dragon scale each. Proof of oaths sworn. Word flew across the Red Mountains like sparrows aflame. God's Grace Sandstone and Ghost Hill lowered banners to half-mast in uncertainty. The ruling Martells, seated in Sunspear's palace of the Towering Spear, dispatched riders north to entreat the Tyrells for aid, south to summon Selsails, east to spy upon the invaders. Yet each raven returned bearing a single silver scale and 8 simple words: blood of the dragon, fire and blood to come. Far to the north in King's Landing, Grandmaster Pycelle unfurled one such scale before the small council. Light shimmered across its ridged surface, red as heart's blood at one angle, black as midnight at another. Littlefinger whistled. "Pretty trinket. Perhaps the queen across the sea has hired jewelers. It reeks of sorcery." Ser Barristan Selmy muttered, aged eyes clouded with memories of dragons he had served in youth. And of truth. Cersei Lannister's painted mouth curled. "We will send the royal fleet to burn their ships. Dragons drown as easily as men." But Varys, clad in lavender, shook his bald head. "Reports differ, Your Grace. Some speak of 3 dragons, others of dozens. Exaggerations, perhaps. Yet I have heard of cities yielding without a blade lifted. The small folk whisper that old Valyria walks again." Robert Baratheon surged upright, wine sloshing from his goblet. "Then we give them war," he growled. Yet Ned Stark, standing rigid at the foot of the table, saw the flicker of fear behind the king's bluster. Later that night, Ned penned a letter to Stannis Baratheon in Dragonstone, urging vigilance. His words were terse, but carried a weight that crossed seas swifter than any sail. In the marches of Dorne, victory bred momentum. The Khalasar split. Half rode west along the Greenblood River under Quero, seizing ferries, stables, and river barges. The other half, led by Drogo and Dany, pressed north toward the Stoneway Pass. Nights grew cooler, and the first dry shrubs gave way to scattered pines. One evening, Dany sat alone on a rocky ledge, above a narrow valley. Below, fires of encampments dotted the dark. Drogon perched upon a boulder nearby, wings mantled, eyes glowing ember red. The dragons had nearly tripled in size. When they tussled, their roars echoed like distant thunder. She ran a hand over her swollen belly. Maester Jogo, formerly a warrior now turned healer, had confirmed life quickening inside her. A child of fire and storm, conceived on the deck of the Balerion beneath a bleeding moon. Dany felt a fierce joy so sharp it scarred her heart's lining. Yet, worry gnawed. Each league north risked open war with the Seven Kingdoms. The Iron Throne's armies might rally faster than Jorah predicted. Already, scouts reported banners gathering in the Stormlands. Renly Baratheon marshaled bright knights in golden rose fields, while Stannis ships prowled Blackwater Bay. Drogo joined her, silent save for the soft clink of bells in his hair. He knelt beside her, one powerful arm sliding across her back. Together, They watched Drogon spread leathery wings and launch into dark sky, the downdraft stirring Dany's hair. When we ride beyond these mountains, we face iron men and walls of stone, she murmured. Drogo grunted. Stone cracks. Iron melts. He turned her chin gently until she met his gaze. I once thought only the Dothraki free. But these people, your people, are bound by words on paper and fear of sharp chairs. We shall break their chains. Dany rested her head against his shoulder. The child we carry will know two worlds then. Grass and dragonfire. Freedom and duty. Benderhand. Our child will know victory, Drogo replied. Crossing the mountains cost blood. Dornish scouts harried supply wagons, sniping from rocky outcroppings. Drogo's outriders hunted them down, leaving cairns of sun-bleached skulls at each pass. Yet the Martells were content with delay, not decisive battle. Their allies north of the mountains needed weeks to muster. At the summit of the Prince's Pass, Dany gazed upon a kingdom transformed. Beyond lay the Reach. Rolling emerald farms, windmills turning lazily, orchards heavy with fruit. It looked almost gentle. But hidden among those hills marched host after host, clad in gleaming steel. Tyrell bannermen, Florence, Fossaways, Oakhearts. Between them and King's Landing, Stormlanders assembled under banners of stag and crowned stag alike, rancor between Baratheon brothers crackling like dry tinder. One afternoon, a rider bearing the sigil of a burning heart approached under white flag. Sir John Fossaway, rayed apple on his surcoat, requested parley on behalf of Lord Renly Baratheon. In a field of tall grass kissed by late summer sun, he was received by Daenerys Targaryen and Khal Drogo, an honor guard of blood riders flanking them. Sir John bowed with practiced grace. King Renly offers alliance, your grace. He holds no love for dragons but less love still for his brother's wrath or his wife's horrors. He proposes. Drogo slashed the air with his arak. A king who sends another man to offer fealty is no king. Sir John's cheeks reddened, but Dany raised a staying hand. Tell Lord Renly I will consider talks if he comes himself, unarmed, beneath the same banner of peace. We share enemies in common. As Sir John rode off, Jorah frowned. Can we trust Renly's word? The Reach is fertile, but likewise treacherous. Dany watched the retreating knight. Trust? No. But we can test loyalties. A promise of dragonflame at his back may tip scales against his brother. That night, she penned letters in 3 scripts: Common, Valyrian, and the flowing glyphs of Korth. Addressed to lords great and small. Dorne's uneasy princes, the marcher lords of the... Each carried the same refrain. Bend the knee, break the chains, share in the dawn of fire. She sealed them with wax, impressed by a dragon in flight. Meanwhile in the north, winds of rumor reached Winterfell. Robb Stark, not yet the young wolf of song but already a hardened boy of 18, read the Raven's scrolls by dawnlight. News of a dragon queen stirred ancient fear older than Ashai, and though the cold gods watched from weirwood branches, Robb felt the earth tremor beneath distant hoofbeats. Catelyn Stark counseled patience. Let the lions and dragons bleed one another. Yet deep in the crypts, Robb knelt beside the stone effigy of Lyanna, recalling tales of Rhaegar and the war that cost the Starks so dearly. Dragons, he whispered, always demand a price. He sent ravens to the Eyrie, to River Run, to Moat Cailin, probing where loyalty lay should southern fires creep north. But destiny, he sensed, moved like shadow across a wall. Silent, unstoppable. Autumn's first chill crossed the manor when Renly Baratheon arrived at camp outside Bitterbridge, escorted by Brienne of Tarth and 100 Rainbow Guard. His bright smile cracked as he beheld dragons circling above tents, stitched from horsetail banners. Yet he rode onward, to where Daenerys awaited beneath a silk pavilion. Dany rose, belly beginning to swell. Renly's gaze flicked there before he knelt, his antlered helm tucked beneath one arm. Your Grace, he said, voice smooth as oil. I come in peace, and in admiration. Drogo lounged on a carved oak chair beside her. The influx of Westerosi furniture, a recent concession to prolonged counsel. He watched Renly like a hunting cat. Over honeyed wine they spoke. Renly offered roads, provisions, passage upriver to the Heartlands. In return, he desired recognition of his claim once the Iron Throne fell, and a marriage between House Baratheon and the future of House Targaryen. An unborn daughter or son bound to the Baratheon line. Dany's answering smile was warm enough to thaw Frostfangs. The dragon is generous, she agreed. But she does not bargain her offspring like horseflesh. She leaned forward, silver hair catching lamplight. Stand with me, Renly Baratheon. Let the world see a united storm of stag and dragon. I will name you Lord Paramount of the Stormlands, Warden of the South. The throne itself, however, is mine. Nendawar. Renly's green eyes glittered. He glanced at Drogo's impassive face, at Jorah's hand resting on sword hilt, at dragons roosting above lintels. A compromise requiring courage? He allowed. My bannermen will balk. Let them, Drogo rumbled. Or let them feed the grass. A flicker of amusement crossed Renly's lips. He rose, bowed with theatrical grace. Very well, your grace. Give me 3 days, and you shall have your answer. He exited into torchlit dusk. Behind canvas walls, Dany closed her eyes. The Game of Thrones unfolded anew, and every move tugged invisible threads stretching from V's Dothrak to Winterfell. Those 3 days birthed conspiracies thick as summer flies. Loras Tyrell urged Renly to claim the Iron Throne at once, ignoring dragons. Mace Tyrell whispered of marriages to bind Reach and Queen alike. But other lords, bold Estermonts, Bastons, Penroses, saw in Daenerys the promise of old blood returned, of a realm renewed through fire's crucible. When Renly returned on the third dusk, horns sounded across camp. He entered unarmed, helm removed. Kneeling before Dany, he spoke not to her, but to the assembled lords who ringed the pavilion. I, Renly Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, do swear fealty to Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of her name. May our united banners tear down the false crown of greed. A murmur coursed through the audience. Shock. Dismay. Awe. Renly rose, turned, and unsheathed his sword. Its edge glinted like dawn. Any man who would call me Oathbreaker is free to test my steel. But know this. Dragons stand at my back. Some knights stormed out. Others knelt. A fracture line split the Stormlands host. Yet for every banner that fled north to King's Landing, another bent toward the rising sun behind Daenerys. That night, wine flowed between tents, and torchlight danced off metal. Dany walked among knights who had once fought her father, yet now toasted her name. She felt Drogon circling overhead, wings brushing stars, and whispered thanks to whatever god still listened. In her pavilion, Drogo drew her close, calloused hands splayed across her stomach. Our child will have many blades, moon of my life, but the greatest will be the fear in our foes' eyes. Then the tree. She laid her palm over his. Fear, yes. And hope. Let us wield both. On the charred ruins of Blackwater Rush, where the ghosts of burned ships still prowled, the royal fleet assembled under King Robert's command. War drums echoed. Sails snapped. War galley oars dipped into oil-slick waters. Yet dissent ran through the lines. Renly's fleet stood absent. Half the Stormlanders had turned coat, and rumors already reached commanders of Tyrell treachery. Robert stood upon the deck of the Iron Hammer, gauntlet wrapped around a wineskin. The Red Keep loomed like a wounded beast behind him. Beside him, Cersei hissed warnings about dragons and traitors, about wildfire and witchfire. But Robert's gaze lingered on the clouds smudging the southern horizon. Clouds that seemed to flicker orange long after sunset. Let them come, he snarled again. Yet the bravado tasted of ash. For across those darkening waves rode a storm neither iron nor stone could withstand. 10,000 hooves, 3 growing dragons, and a queen forged in exile's flames. Westeros had forgotten the sound of dragon wings. It was about to learn anew. Days later, the united host of Dothraki riders and Stormlander knights marched north along the King's Road. At Bitterbridge, Tyrell scouts joined them, offering bread and salt in token of truce. Highgarden, they said, would not spill Reachman blood to defend a drunken usurper. Mace Tyrell dreamed instead of royal marriages and fertile alliances. Daenerys received them with measured courtesy. She promised fertile grain markets beneath dragon protection if the Reach remained neutral or bent the knee. Lord Mace, ever eager to feast rather than fight, agreed to absence of hostility until matters settled. Drogo scoffed at such cowardice, but saw wisdom in leaving fields unburned for future tribute. The Khalasar's horses grazed like locusts across meadows anyhow, stripping wheat to stalk. North of Turnbridge, their vanguard clashed with a Lannister outrider force. Bronze horns sounded, and dust spiraled. Dothraki screamed war cries, long araks shining, Stormlander lances leveled. Atop a ridge, Dany watched Drogon dive, flame roaring. Men scattered, armor slagging. In minutes the field lay strewn with scorched sigils, direwolf, lion, crowned stag. Proof that even allies of convenience might betray. Jorah returned blood-spattered. Small force probing. Tywin waits near Harrenhal. He means to let us founder against the royal host first. Then we deny him that luxury, Dany answered. She dispatched ravens to River Run, seat of House Tully, inviting Lord Hoster's bannermen to join. The letter offered justice for Ned Stark, rumored imprisoned by scheming Lannisters. She also invited Robb Stark south, promising northern independence under Targaryen protection. The ink was still wet when word reached them that Ned had escaped the capital and ridden north, pursued by gold cloaks. Arya Stark had vanished. Sansa kept hostage, Tyrion Lannister named acting hand. The realm quaked beneath too many crowns. Amid the chaos, Daenerys marched steadily, unrelenting. Autumn's chill deepened into biting wind when the host approached King's Landing. They camped along rolling hills thick with blackberry bramble. From his vantage atop a stony rise, Drogo surveyed the walls. Massive, studded with scorpions and trebuchets. Fires burned along ramparts where guards kept watch for dragons. Dany joined him, wrapped in shaggy cloak. Behind them, the dragons flexed wings now broad enough to cast horse-sized shadows. Jorah stepped beside her, pointing to the river glimmering under moon. Blackwater Rush is deeper than the Rhoyne here. The royal fleet controls its mouth. We cannot sail past their chain. Nor need we, Dany said. Fire leaps water. She laid a hand on Drogon's scaled neck. His hiss vibrated through her bones. Tomorrow at dawn we show Robert Baratheon what Orys Baratheon's stolen blood cost him. Drogo clasped her hand. We ride with fire overhead. In darkness, Dothraki scouts crept to the city's south bank, cutting throats of sentries in reeds. Renly's knights dismantled palisades along the King's Road. Tyrell sappers packed barrels of oil beneath the Dragon Gate, bribing city urchins to carry torches at dawn. Just before sunrise, a hush fell across camp. Daenerys stood before the gathered Khalasar, belly round beneath scaled armor of dusky rose dragon leather. Wind teased silver hair loose from braids. She raised her arms, and the dragons descended, 3 shadows streaking crimson on the horizon, embers trailing. On this day we reclaim what was forged in fire and stolen in treason. Her voice rang clear as bronze. The Iron Throne belongs to House Targaryen. By blood, by birth, by flame. 3 beats of silence, then Drogo bellowed. A wave of sound answered. Cheers, drum beats, whinnies. Thousands mounted, hooves pawing earth. Dany climbed atop her mare. Drogon alighted on a saddle horn fashioned of tempered steel, his talons gripping as easily as roosting on stone. Rhaegal and Viserion winged overhead. She drew to the blade Jorah had gifted her, a slender bastard sword of Valyrian steel, smoke dark, rippling with red undertones. Lifting it skyward, she glimpsed her reflection in its depths, a queen birthed by fire, eyes fierce with promise. "Hiya!" she cried, spurring forward. The host surged after, a living avalanche. Moments later, dawn broke. Its first light caught the dragons as they banked over the city, and flames rained down in molten gold. Arrows whistled upward but burned midair. The dragon gate exploded in a boom of oil and ignited pitch, walls crumbling outward. Smoke pillars spiraled, visible for leagues. Yet this was only beginning. For within the Red Keep, Robert Baratheon roused from drunken slumber to the sound of bells. Bells he had ordered to ring victory after the trident, but which now told calamity. Outside his chamber, Lannister guards shouted. Within, Cersei armed herself with a smile sharper than any dagger. Across the bay, Stannis' fleet slammed oars through water, black sail emblazoned with fire-shipping heart. He had weighed blood against honor and chosen the latter, steering his ships against his brothers. Chaos braided itself, strand by strand, into something none could control. On the field before the shattered gates, Drogo rode down lines of gold cloaks. His arakh whirled in arcs of silver, cleaving helmets. Stormlander knights pushed forward, shields locked. Dothraki arrows arced overhead, crimson-fletched, blotting out the rising sun. Daenerys advanced among them, sword warm in her grip. Smoke stung her lungs, embers flickered through her hair. Atop the wall, archers scrambled as Rhaegal's flame licked crenellations. She saw fear blooming in faces, a memory of dragons come again. Near the Mudgate, a company of Lannister men-at-arms attempted countercharge. Dany leaned forward, whispering to Drogon. The dragon lunged, fire spewing in a cone that turned mail to slag. Charred men shrieked. The remnants fled. Inside the city, small folk poured into streets, scattering before the stampede of riders. Some fell to knees, heads bowed. Others hid in cellars. Dany had ordered her forces to spare them. She knew the heart of the realm was people, not bricks. Every life saved this day would echo as loyalty tomorrow. She turned her mare toward the Red Keep. Drogo and his blood riders converged, streaked with soot. Thunder roared overhead, Regal diving past ramparts, Viserion trailing flame across a siege tower. In the courtyard of the fortress, Robert Baratheon staggered forth clad in gilded breastplate that strained across his girth. He bellowed like a wounded bear, warhammer raised. Dragons do not scare Robert Baratheon. He roared, though terror flared in his eyes at the sight of Drogon circling. Drogo dismounted with predatory grace. The Khal walked through drifting ash, each step resonant. Horse lord, Robert sneered. Come taste a king's steel. Their duel lasted heartbeats yet felt carved beyond time. Robert's hammer crashed down, stone shattering under one miss. Drogo rolled aside, arakh flashing. On the third exchange, the hammer's half splintered where dragonfire earlier had licked it. Drogo's arakh swept low, severing tendon. Robert fell to one knee, curses gurgling. Drogo stepped forward, placed his blade against the usurper's throat. The courtyard fell silent, but for distant screams and the deep rumble of dragons overhead. Daenerys entered then, cloak billowing, sword pointed downward. She looked upon the man who had murdered her family, hunted her across seas. Yet instead of triumph, she felt an old sadness, loss of a world that might have been. Robert stared up, sweat mixing with blood. Finish it, girl, he rasped. Spare me your mercy speeches. Dany shook her head. Mercy? No. Justice. She glanced at Drogo. He understood. In one swift motion, the Khal swept the arakh. Robert Baratheon fell, his lifeblood soaking flagstones. Thus ended the reign of the usurper. Bells tolled anew, no longer alarm, but mourning. Yet victory's crown is forged in the fires that follow. Cersei Lannister vanished amid smoke, taking Sansa Stark. Joffrey fled with the Hound toward the Stormlands. Tywin Lannister marshaled forces west, fury hotter than dragonflame. And in the north, Robb Stark's banners crossed the Green Fork. Wolves on the prowl. Within the throne room, throne grasped like a hungry beast. Daenerys Targaryen ascended the steps. She stood before the Iron Throne forged of conquered swords. Drogon landed upon its back, claws curling around fused steel. The sight was terrible, wondrous. Drogo pressed a hand to her shoulder. "Ride," he whispered. "Claim?" She turned, gaze sweeping assembled lords, Tyrell emissaries, Dothraki coes, Stormlander knights, trembling smallfolk. She did not seat herself yet. Instead, she spoke. "Today, fire has cleansed injustice. But fire alone cannot build. I will take this throne to forge a realm where the weak are shielded, where oaths matter. I have seen slaves sold for copper and kings bought for gold. No more." Medim Sawa. Some bowed. Others exchanged wary glances. Yet none dared speak dissent beneath the dragon's gaze. She would sit. Soon. But first there was Cersei to find, Tywin to answer. Realms to heal. The wheel still turned, and dragons in the sky were only the beginning. Daenerys felt life quicken in her womb, strong as a galloping stallion. She laid a hand there. Silent promise forming. One kingdom born in blood. One future kindled in flame. The next chapter awaited. Ka. Smoke still coiled above the red keep, draping the battlements in gauzy shrouds of dusk-lit ember. The streets below, glazed with a residue of fear and half-melted tallow, thrummed with the uneasy hush that follows thunder, too close to measure. Within the Queen's solar, a long chamber once perfumed with Dornish wine and Tyroshi rosewater, but now redolent of scorched leather and the faint mineral tang of fresh-quenched steel. Daenerys Targaryen stood at an open window, palms resting on the carved stone sill. Beyond, 3 growing dragons wheeled like living runes cut out of sunset. Bronze-green Regal, pallid gold Viserion, and Drogon, already broad-winged enough to eclipse the courtyard pools with shadow. Their cries serrated the air, and occasionally a fan of saffron flame licked the darkening sky before guttering into sparks. She did not turn when Ser Jorah Mormont entered. His boots clicked over spilled glass and fractured tile. Any tapestries that might have softened footfalls were ash now. He halted 2 paces behind her, helm under one arm, cloak hem charred. "Khaleesi," he said, voice low with fatigue and reverence braided together. "The tally stands near complete. Rough counts, 2,000 gold cloaks slain or fled, near thrice that number of Lannister foot, though small folk losses mercifully light." Light. She reflected. For a city subdued by dragonfire and fear, yet every gutted home and ragdoll corpse weighed on her ribs like molten lead. "And Robert's brothers?" she asked without turning. "Renly sends riders hourly. He holds the King's Gate, patrols the Roserad south. His banners siphon the stragglers who still call him king. Stannis commands the river. What ships remain after the dragons and wildfire both?" A flicker of sardonic admiration ghosted across Jorah's bearded face. He captured 9 of his brother's war galleys intact when the crews struck their oars, rather than face our fire. Dragon rumor travels quick on water. And Tywin Lannister, still roadbound. Harrenhal's host marches under night and day, but scouts say they pause to strip granaries clean. He means to starve us from behind these walls or bleed us on open ground where stone offers no refuge from horse. Jorah paused. "He also holds your hand." Lord Eddard Stark never reached Winterfell. Tywin rides with him caged. The window's cold edge bit into Daenerys' hands. Ned Stark had knelt before her only hours past, offering his sword in exchange for an end to the slaughter of innocents. She had agreed, heartened by such honor in a land scoured clean of it. To hear he had been captured en route stabbed deeper than any spear. He left under promise of safe passage. Promises signed in dragon's breath unsettle men of colder blood. Jorah answered. Daenerys forced a slow breath. Below, the dragon yard thronged with blacksmiths, laboring under torches to bend red-hot iron into Dothraki curved armor plates. The clangor sounded like distant bells knelling doom. "Drogo, with the Khalasar," Jorah replied. "He trains riders to vault stone stairwells like gullies in the Dothraki Sea. I believe he means to hunt lions through their own city tomorrow. A faint smile tugged at her lips despite leaden worry. Let him keep them wary. But remind him Lannister corpses cannot barter Lord Stark's life back. Jorah inclined his head. I will, Khaleesi. She turned then. Silver hair haloed in copper dusk. Ready the hall. Tonight we convene War Council, Renly, Stannis, the Tyrell envoys, Sir Barristan if he'll sit among them. We must shape victory before Tywin sharpens it against us. As you command. Sir Jorah bowed and strode from the chamber, leaving the Queen alone with her dragons and the lengthening night. The small hall of the Tower of the Hand had been swept of the lords who once plotted treason for sport. Its oak-paneled walls now bristled with Dothraki spears hung in crossed pairs, alongside shields freshly painted with the crowned stag of Renly Baratheon and the fiery heart of Stannis. The table, a slab of glossy heartwood big enough to host a banquet, groaned beneath scrolls, half-unrolled maps, and one severed Lannister helm scorched pitch black. A warning Drogo had nailed there before council began. Renly arrived first, gold and emerald cloak spotless, though a faint bruise darkened the apple of his left cheek, where a panicked archer's arrow had glanced. He chatted lightly with Brienne of Tarth, whose sky-blue surcoat lay ragged from earlier melee. Next came Stannis, face-carved granite, Maester's ink still blotted on the parchment, clenched in one gauntleted fist. Lord Mace Tyrell waddled in soon after, smelling of lavender and roast quail, trailed by his slender son Garland and 80 retinue knights, shining like harvest. Sir Barristan Selmy, ghost-pale hair matted by soot, white cloak gone done, accepted a seat near the Queen with silent dignity. Last swept Khal Drogo, bare-chested and bell-braided, eyes smoldering. When Daenerys entered, conversation stilled like a pond beneath falling ash. She wore no crown, only a rough-spun ash-gray riding coat belted above her pregnancy, dragon-scale pauldrons protecting shoulders flecked with still bright sparks. The long Valyrian blade sheathed at her hip sufficed as scepter. Lords, sergeants, bloodriders, she began, voice cutting clean through torch smoke haze. King's Landing is ours in body, not yet in spirit. Tywin marches. Cersei plots. The North waits. We have foes aplenty but chances likewise. Tonight, we decide whether fire births a realm or devours it. She gestured to the maps. Garland Tyrell unfurled one. A rough rendering of Westeros peppered with colored stones. Black for Targaryen forces, red for Lannister, green for Tyrell. Blue stags and silver seahorses dotted coasts in fractious clusters. Stannis jabbed a mailed finger at the red cluster moving south from Harrenhal. Father's sword won many battles under that lion banner. Tywin may be old, but not slow. He marches 60,000, foot heavy with plate, horse heavier still. He'll hug the Gold Road, live off its storehouses, reach King's Landing in less than a moon. Damn. Renly drummed manicured fingers. If we hold him beneath the city walls, we risk siege. Supplies run thin after riot and sack. He flashed a genial smile at his older brother. Best meet him in the field, Stannis. Best cut his sinew before he reaches stride, Stannis countered. A strike north under cover of river fog. We burn his baggage, free Stark, force him to chase ghosts whilst his men starve. And oh. Drogo leaned forward, braid bells chiming. Khaleesi, give me 5,000 riders. We ride night circle, kill horse before dawn. Man without horse is snake in dead grass, easy to trample. A bold flanking, Garland observed, but Tywin's outriders guard his columns keenly. Sir Barristan cleared his throat, parchmenty. Tywin Lannister led the relief of King's Landing during Robert's rebellion. I watched his approach. Columns fanned wide. Outriders ahead and to flank. Siege lines behind. Yet he fears dragonfire. Every man of his does. Show flame in his path, and half will falter. Then, wall. Daenerys considered. Dragons tire quickly yet recover with meat. One flight each dawn, another at dusk. Harry the march but reserve strength for pitched battle. She looked at Drogo. Your riders strike his scouts. Sir Barristan directs flight fires along supply tail. Renly and Stannis marshal ground legions to intercept near the Wendwater where forests choke cavalry. We choose the field. Renly tilted his head. The Wendwater lies deep within Stormlander soil. My men know every ford and fallen log. He shot Stannis a quick smile. We can position siege engines along clearing edges, narrow his charge lanes. Stannis grunted assent. Better than letting his catapults loose below Red Keep. Agree. Tyrell coughed delicately. And House Tyrell? We prefer open pastures for our banners, but we can send harvest wains to feed the city. Lighten your granary strain. Daenerys inclined her head. Accepted, Lord Tyrell. By loyalty among bakers and small folk, bread now wins hearts long after blades dull. Danon? Yora nudged a separate scroll toward her. Ravens from the Riverlords. Mallisters, Blackwoods, Freys, Brackens, each pledging men, if proof came that Ned Stark lived. Lord Stark's rescue is liver, he murmured. She addressed the table. Lord Stark is captive. Tywin values him as hostage against Northern Riverlands. Free him, we gain 2 hosts while Lannisters lose 1. Renly frowned. Rescue inside an army marching? Risky. Stannis tapped parchment. More reason to strike baggage trains first. Stark likely rides bound within rear guard. Fewer eyes, heavier wagons. Ban? All the more cause to let Drogo's lightning fall there, Barristan said. Drogo grinned, showing wolf-white teeth. We ride at moonrise, lion's wake with empty cages. The council hammered out finer points, signal fires, rendezvous glades, fallback lines near the Windwater's southern forks. As final quills scratched parchment, Daenerys felt the child inside her stir. A flutter against her womb, as if attuned to war drums. She laid a hand there, steadying. When plan satisfied, she rose. We ride before moonrise. May the Seven, or the Stallion, or any god who hears, guide our fires true. Nan. Drogo touched forehead to hers, then strode out to rouse his riders. Renly departed whistling, cloak swirling green and gold. Stannis followed, face austere yet eyes lit by something like purpose. Tyrells clustered, whispering opportunities. Barristan bowed low. Jorah lingered last. You lead them, he said softly. As Aegon once led his sisters, yet kinder. Kindness, she mused, was a blade honed on sorrow. Let's hope it cuts deep enough. Night fell, in bruised layers of amethyst and black. Beneath its cover, the Khalasar moved like a dark tide from the city's northern gates. 2,000, then 3, then 5, sweeping across moon-silvered fields. No torches betrayed them. The Dothraki rode by starlight, eyes accustomed to desert gloom. At their head galloped Khal Drogo on a stallion midnight blue, hooves whispering over dew-damp grass. Beside him raced his blood riders, Kohalo and Rakaro, each bearing twin aurochs strapped across saddles. Behind them, Quaro's archers notched arrows fletched with gray falcon feathers, plucked from Stormland rookeries. They rode hard until dawn tinged the east, then slowed, keeping to ridge shadows overlooking the Gold Road. Below, Tywin's vanguard trudged. Endless files of pikemen in Lannister crimson, baggage mules laden with casks, siege towers disassembled for carting, smith wagons belching sparks. Outriders loped ahead in 2s and 3s, eyes on hedgerows. Drogo lifted a hand. Riders melted into thickets. When sun crested, a faint jingle of bells carried on wind, no louder than lark song. A Lannister scout cocked his head. Then a stallion erupted from bramble. No time to shout before aurochs sliced throat. Blood sprayed Duatua. Another scout wheeled, kicked spurs, but arrow pierced his spine. He toppled, horse screaming. From then, terror traveled faster than hoofbeats. At midday, the baggage line came under attack. First a hail of arrows, then riders slashing ropes so wagons yawed, crashing into one another. Dothraki lit pitchpots, hurled them. Flames licked tarpaulin. Oxen bolted, trampling cooks. Amid confusion, Drogo's personal guard slithered behind screens of smoke, found the iron-barred prisoner wagon. 2 Lannister guards there. One became a headless stump, the other fell choking on his own tongue. Inside sat Eddard Stark, gaunt, wrists shackled. His gray eyes widened at Drogo looming like night. The Khal drew a dagger. Severed bonds, jerked Ned to feet. Words were unnecessary. Stark nodded once, grim. Rakharo flung a spare cloak over him, and they spirited him to waiting mounts. By dusk, Tywin's march lay in ragged disarray. Supply carts blazing, soldiers famished, outriders flinching at every rustle. Lord Stark gone. Lions roared fury, but prey already vanished into Wraithwood. 2 nights later, deep within Stormland Forest, Daenerys met Ned Stark again. A ring of torches formed a private glade. Drogo and Bloodriders stood sentinel, though Stark nodded greeting more to the Queen than any guard. He knelt one knee, stiff but resolute. "Your Grace," he said, voice hoarse from travel, "I came south to find honor. I found treachery, yet today your riders risked all to free me. I owe a debt, and my sword if you will have it." She bid him rise. "I would. And your counsel. War tears this realm between dragons and lions and wolves. Help me bind it together." "Man?" Ned studied her. The faint swell of pregnancy, ash-streaked cheeks, pale eyes fierce as winter starshine. "The wolf's loyalty is hard-won," he said at last, "but not impossible. My son marches south to free me. Let me ride to meet him. End blood between our camps before it begins." Daenerys hesitated. Drogo growled. "Wolves bite if not muzzled." But she lifted a hand. "Go then. Take 2 of my own outriders as escort." She handed him a letter sealed with molten wax bearing the dragon's sigil. "Give Robb Stark my offer. Peace, self-rule for the North, and justice for his sisters. Stand with me against the lions, and the realm's wheel turns in favor of all free peoples." Ned accepted, eyes bright. "I shall deliver it, your grace. And if gods are kind, bring your answers swiftly." While the wolf rode north, the lions licked wounds. Tywin established camp on the east bank of the Wendwater, choosing open pasture flanked by low hills for his artillery. The gold road behind him lay charred, but he rallied. For every wagon burned, he seized 3 from terrified reachmen. For every scout lost, he paid 5 cutthroats to roam. He posted siege ram crews drilling day and night. Smiths reforging arrowheads into broadheads meant to pierce dragon scale. Across the river, Stormlander infantry entrenched. Renly's bright tents like scattered blossoms amid Renly's green. Stannis' grim, turnip-brown pavilions anchored the Align's northern end. And between them, Dothraki encampments sprawled like a nest of restless serpents. Tyrell provisions rolled daily. Overhead, dragons prowled, setting ablaze any Lannister forage party straying far. Days stretched into a test of nerve. Skirmishes flared at night. Dothraki bowmen darting across moonlit meadows. Lannister crossbow volleys hissing back. One morning, a Dothraki head arrived, catapult hurled. Braids still bell-adorned. By dusk, 3 charred lion banners returned atop pikes, smoking. The river between armies reddened with blood of fish and men alike. Then came Ned Stark's raven. It swept first to Daenerys' war tent. Then, at her instruction, glided across camps to Renly, Stannis, Garland, Tyrell, and finally soared over river under a ranged white flag to deposit twin scrolls at Tywin's command pavilion. One scroll bore the Stark direwolf, the other, the dragon. Tywin read the latter by lamplight. A queen's hand offered parley. Hostages exchanged. A conclave of great houses convened beneath truce in the Sept of Baelor to negotiate prisoners, terms, recompense. Tywin's thin lips twisted. Parley under dragon shadow meant disadvantage. Yet every night more supply carts burned. Morale frayed. Gold wins wars, but only if men accept coin to fight. Already whispers among sellsword companies. Better switch to side with dragons than roast within lion's maw. He consulted his favorite child, Cersei, who had slipped into camp disguised as a washerwoman, Sansa Stark in tow. Cersei's hair cut short under a rough kerchief, her eyes cold wildfire blue. She urged guile. "Accept the parley," she said. "Bring wildfire kegs disguised as peace offerings. Detonate when dragons perch." Tywin stroked his beard but said only, "We consider." Yet that night, Tyrion Lannister arrived unannounced from King's Landing, shackled but escorted by Barristan Selmy and 3 Rainbow Guard. Daenerys had freed him, gambling mischief. She permitted Tyrion to speak with his father under safe conduct. In Tywin's pavilion, father and son argued until torches guttered low. Outside, a Stormlander guard overheard fragments. "Dragon flame unstoppable, Casterly rock vulnerable. Wage peace now, rule in gold tomorrow." The next dawn, Tywin requested truce. The Sept of Baelor's towering doors, cracked and blackened by earlier riot fires, gaped once more for princes and Khalasars alike. Myriad banners drooped inside gloom. The red 3-headed dragon, the golden lion, the dire wolf of Stark newly unfurled within city walls at Daenerys' command. Candlelight glimmered upon marble pillars scarred by looters' axes. Under the basin of the Mother's Mercy, an oblong table arrayed with 7 lamps awaited. Into the chamber filed Daenerys, flanked by Jorah and Ser Barristan. Khal Drogo, scowl-etched. Tywin Lannister, stooped but unbowed, with Tyrion at heels. Renly Baratheon in doublet bright as lime leaf. Stannis armored austere. Ned Stark now free, and beside him his son Robb tall, raw-nerved, and Sansa Stark, eyes downcast but alive. Across from her stood her sister Arya, wild-haired, newly found within Flea Bottom by Jorah's spies. Tears threatened, but Ned squeezed their hands. When all seated, the High Septon, trembling but bold, intoned blessings. Then Daenerys spoke. Her words sameness of steel and dawn. "Born of storm and exile, I return not to avenge, but to restore. Robert Baratheon lies dead for crimes against crown and people. Yet new crimes breed daily, blood of common folk spilled to sate pride. War ends here, or winter devours every house alike." Tywin steepled fingers. "Peace demands price, your grace. My niece Myrcella, my grandson Joffrey, both heirs to throne by birth if none question Robert's marriage." Renly laughed softly. "Joffrey, who fled dressed as a washer girl. Kingship grows lighter than his crown, it seems." Then Noctamer. Robb Stark slammed palm. "Children of incest, by all rumor. Throne never theirs." He fixed Tywin with wolf-gray gaze. "But keep your lion cubs safe. Pay recompense, swear fealty, and the North stays its claws." Tywin's nostrils flared. "Swear fealty to Dragon Queen. We might, if certain assurances." He turned to Daenerys. Casterly Rock remained seat of Lannister rule. Debts owed the throne repaid in yearly levies, not dragonfire raising our minds. "Agreed," Daenerys said. "In return, Lannisters release all hostages, including Sansa, Arya, and any taken in Riverlands. They cede Riverlands castles sacked unjustly, and there will be no retaliation against small folk suspected of aiding us. Break these, and dragons answer." Tywin inclined head stiffly. "And the fate of my daughter? The Queen Dowager? Cersei stands accused of treason, regicide plots, and abduction. She will face trial, by combat if she chooses." Daenerys' eyes glittered. "Let her champion stand before Drogon if courage suffices." A chill scudded the candle flames. Tyrion cleared his throat. "Mayhaps exile across narrow sea suits better, far from realm's game?" Stannis scowled. "Banish the viper, and she knits new poison nests. Better the axe." Discussion spiraled. Compromises weighed. Precedent cited from dusty tomes Barristan fetched. Renly penned draft treaties. Tyrell envoys scribbled grain price guarantees. Drogo toyed with his Eric, bored to madness by words. Through it all, Daenerys kept mind on realm beyond these walls. Farmers needing seed, fisherfolk nets, orphans solace. She pushed for reparations funds, gleaned from Lannister coffers, Tyrell silos, reach gold. Hours crawled. But at length, agreements inked. Each lord pressed signet to parchment. Tywin's lion, Stark direwolf, twin stag sigils of off-clashing brothers now bound. Tyrell rose, and at head of scroll 3-headed dragon sealed with droplet of molten wax that hissed when it cooled. Peace seldom holds without mortar. When the lords dispersed, Daenerys ascended the Iron Throne at last, Drogon curling around spires behind her. A hush swept the throne room. Knights of many banners ringed hall. Small folk clustered near back, eyes wide. She addressed them. I claim this throne not for conquest alone, but for covenant. Henceforth slavery, in any form, is outlawed across 7 kingdoms. Grain levies shall fill royal storehouses first for famine relief before feasts for lords. And the people shall have voice. Each region will choose a speaker to the Queen's moot, held seasonally here. Some lords murmured dismay. Others nodded thoughtfully. A city once cracked by fear now listened to possibility. As weeks unfolded, reforms sprouted. Unsullied soldiers, gift from just freed Astapor emissaries, patrolled alleys gentle yet firm. Dothraki riders trained city watch recruits in mounted archery. Tyrell engineers repaired aqueducts. Northern masons raised new walls. A council of 9 was formed. Ned Stark as hand, Renly as master of laws, Tyrion at Daenerys' invitation as master of coin, his wit too valuable, his debts forgiven upon swearing oath of service. Sir Barristan as Lord Commander, Garland Tyrell as master of ships, Varys restored as whisperer though watched by dragon's gaze. Missandei of Nath served as queen's voice to freed in foreign tongues. Cersei chose trial by combat. Dotto, her champion Sir Gregor Clegane, faced Drogo in an arena hollowed from the dragon pit. Tens of thousands watched. The mountain towered, but Drogo danced, a blur of bells and bronze. In final stroke, the Arak parted helm and skull. Blood misted. Cersei screamed rage, but no mercy came. She was led to Sept of Baelor's square scaffold, and there sentenced, public witness to justice. Some cheered, others wept, yet all understood dragon law had teeth. Winter's first breath drifted south. Frosting Kingswood leaves powder white. On a crisp dawn, Daenerys stood on balcony of Maegor's Holdfast, cloak lined in white wolf fur. Gift from Robb Stark, who returned North's sworn friend. Her belly swelled round, child restless. Drogon perched on crenelle above, tail curling like smoke. Footsteps drew. She turned to see Tywin Lannister approaching, unarmed, face pale as old parchment. He knelt awkwardly. Your Grace. A letter from Casterly Rock. His voice wavered. Word that our mines run dry. Vines spent after centuries. Lannister gold dwindles. A dragon queen studied the richest man in realm. Humble. The realm's wealth shifts, she said. Gold fades. Grain grows. Plant vineyards where mines empty. Forge plowshares from pickaxes. Trade flows east now. My dragons will guard the sea roads. He dipped his head. Something like resignation creasing brows. We will adapt if rock endures. It will, she assured. Lions have place in dawn, I shape, if they learn to hunt with mercy. He rose, eyes meeting hers across gulf of age and grief. Perhaps. Then departed, cloak whispering. Drogo emerged, arms folding around her. Together they watched Rhaegal and Viserion chasing pigeons over collapsing rooftops, soon to be rebuilt. Child kicks, he murmured, hand splayed over curve. A dragon, she smiled. Or a stallion. Both, he corrected, kissing her hair. Far north, beyond broken watch castles, a deeper threat stirred. White shadows moving through haunted forest, ice spiders huge as hounds. Atop the wall, a white-cloaked figure named Jon Snow felt chill. Not of mere winter, but of doom centuries old. Ravens brought news of dragons reborn, queen crowned, yet he gazed at night sky and saw glimmers of pale fire weaving veils above frostbit stars. Not dragon fire. Something older, colder. He penned a letter. "Your grace, your dragons burn bright, but another fire is needed at world's end. Send help, or all realms fall to darkness." Wax sealed, direwolf sigil imprinted. He loosed Raven south. Within red keep Solar, Daenerys read Yon's plea. She looked to Drogon lounging before hearth, wings half unfurled. "Another test approaches," she whispered. "Ice this time, not iron." Behind her, snowflakes hissed against glass. First snowstorm in King's Landing memory. She pressed hand to womb, feeling heartbeats of child and realm interlaced. Then she summoned scribes, ordered provisions north, and called for counsel at dawn. "Let the world see," she said to the silent room, "how fire and blood may forge not only conquest but shield against the night." Dragons roared approval, and bells of King's Landing answered, their echoes drifting skyward to mingle with the falling snow. In the vaults beneath the sept, where ancient kings slumbered in marble repose, the lonely crown of Robert Baratheon rested now upon a simple pedestal. No longer a stag's head heavy with jeweled antlers, it had been reforged, melted with silver and Valyrian steel shavings, recast into a circlet of 3 intertwining bands: dragon, stag, and wolf, biting tail to tail, symbols of pact forged by war and tempered by mercy. One day soon, when winter's winds lay still, the queen would place it upon her heir, child of sand and snow, flame and grass, and in the 7 kingdoms, reborn in scarlet dawn, would remember how Khal Drogo and Daenerys Stormborn crossed the world to give it hope and heart. Until then, the dragons kept watch, fire mirrored in snow crystal, and the night waited its turn upon the stage. Moonless night lay over the city, thick with the clean edge of snowfall. Tiny flakes drifted through arrow slits and settled on windowsills, like ghosts of the high north come to spy on dragon-ruled lands. In her private solar, Daenerys watched them melt against warm granite, until silver droplets chased one another down the stone. She traced a fingertip through the water trails, mapping a river system that did not yet exist, one she would have to carve through frost and fear, if the realm were to survive the winter ghost Jon Snow's Raven had promised. Fire crackled in the hearth behind her. Drogon sprawled before it, wings half furled, tail thumping in slow rhythm every time a log popped. The other 2 perched on the high rafters, restless in the cold. Sparks curled upward and died against damp beams. She felt the dragon's unease as a vibration in her breastbone, their hearts accelerating each time a shaft of wind whistled through broken glass somewhere in the keep. They did not love walls. Neither did she, though she sat a queen upon a throne of them. Jorah entered without ceremony, cloak dusted white. Scouts from the Crownlands villages, Khaleesi, walkers sighted on the Blackwater's upper forks, dead livestock, frozen still standing. Lord Barrett claims torches won't burn them. Men now. She closed her eyes, recalling Viserys' frightened campfire stories of blue-eyed corpses that stalked the last hero. "The dead march faster than ravens," she murmured. "We cannot wait in stone while North drowns in night." A soft chime of bells preceded Drogo. The Khal brushed snow from his shoulders, face glowing from exertion after drilling new recruits in the torchlit practice yard. "My riders grow bored of walls," he said in the common tongue still thick on his lips. "We follow dead things to edge of world if you led." She turned. "And food? Horses starve in blizzards. Small folk will curse us if we strip their granaries. We butcher our herds south of the neck, send smoked meat ahead," Drogo replied. "I rode winter storms once in Vase Horus. Snow bites, but hunger kills slower than spear." Jorah laid out scrolls on a table near the fire. Pinpricks marked storehouses in the Riverlands, now pledged by Lady Blackwood and Lord Mallister after Tywin's withdrawal. "Enough grain to move an army thrice over the neck," he said, tapping lists of bushels. "If the Manderley fleet ferries while rivers still run, we avoid the long lake ice choking eastward routes." She nodded. "Have Garland Tyrell arrange shipments, and Rudiger Estermann's shipwrights will reinforce hulls. Ironwood, double planking to break flow." Drogon's tail thumped again as though answering. Across the room, Miss Andice's quill scratched on parchment. A census of refugees already spilling into King's Landing from villages where the frost came early. Mothers with no milk. Fisherfolk whose nets hauled shards of black ice instead of herring. Fear traveled on every road. When council ended, Daenerys slipped from the keep before dawn. She walked alone through the deserted stews, wool cloak muffling her steps. Snow muted the city's stench. It seemed even the rats had burrowed deep. She paused before the Sept of the Dragon, once a shabby shrine to Relor, now repaired by grateful worshippers of light. Candles glimmered inside like drowsy stars. She knelt at its frozen threshold and pressed palm to barely melted wax pooled on the step. "Guide our fire," she whispered. "Let it warm, not only burn." Weeks bled into a tide of preparations. Smithies rang day and night, forging iron dragonglass arrowheads, shipped from Dragonstone's obsidian caves. Their edges so keen they sang when struck. Maesters brewed wildfire in hidden alchemy labs under the direction of Tyrion Lannister, who cackled that if ice hated flame, give it hell's own green fury. Unsullied drilled side by side with gold cloaks newly sworn, their formations guided by Grey Worm's curt, Dothraki curses. Even the Tyrell carpenters took axe to the bare orchard slopes outside the city, shaping trebuchet frames tall as the maiden vault. When the sun showed again, low, red, and weak, it gleamed across a column stretching leagues beyond the Roserad. Banners of dragon, wolf, crowned stag, trident, and rose. Horsehair pennons of the Khalasar fluttering like black flames. Swords caught the light as a sea catches dawn. The departure formed a mosaic of tongues and customs, unlikely allies welded by necessity and the will of a silver-haired queen. Daenerys rode at the vanguard, belly swollen heavy now yet back straight. Ser Barristan had begged her to ride a cushioned litter, but she refused. The child within kicked as if seconding her. Drogon shadowed her like a thundercloud, Rhaegal and Viserion circling at distance, that sent villages scurrying indoors. Songs erupted among the ranks, Dothraki herding chants, Stormland spearmen bawdy jest, northern dirges about ice spiders. At night, those songs mingled with the crackle of myriad campfires until air itself hummed. They traveled first to Bitterbridge, where the Reach granaries bulged. Lord Mace Tyrell waddled out to greet them beneath a garland of half-frozen roses. He quivered at his first sight of snow, muttering about curses from northern gods. Yet he turned over wagons stacked with flour and casks of pickled quince. In exchange, Daenerys left a pair of unsullied companies to guard his roads against lingering Lannister brigands. Garland Tyrell accompanied her north. His people later whispered he saw destiny brighter than vineyards in her cause. Crossing the Wendwater's frozen shallows proved perilous. Cracks spiderweb beneath iron-shod hooves. One wagon tilted, spilling a dozen casks that burst like berries against the ice. Grey Worm organized rope teams. Dothraki riders leapt from saddle to slide barrels across singing sheets. No man fell through, though laughter rang like steel when a Reach knight lost footing and nearly kissed the river. Even Drogo chuckled. Beyond the Wendwater, the King's Road narrowed under leaning pines laden with snow so thick it muffled wagon creaks. Scouts reported bannermen under Lady Brienne of Tarth holding way stations, providing fresh horseflesh and crates of smoked trout. Further north, Brotherhood without banners patrols snuffed out bandit camps, freeing thralls who now marched behind Daenerys' host waving makeshift banners of flame-painted linen. Yet, not all cheer. At Maidenpool, refugees crowded the roadside, rag-wrapped infants mewling against dead air. Their stories bore echoes. Children lost to pale figures at field's edge. Husbands who simply did not wake one dawn, their skin beaded with rime. Daenerys ordered mobile kitchens erected, unsullied handed bread. Healers rubbed frostbit limbs. That night she walked among the camp, cradling warm bricks quarried from hearth fires. She laid one at each child's feet, telling them dragons would watch their dreams. Some smiled through cracked lips. Some only stared, eyes reflecting far-off horrors. At Moat Cailin, the old neck fortress loomed half-swallowed by swamp mist. Refurbished palisades bristled with the direwolf of House Stark. Robb awaited there, flanked by black-cloaked sentries of the Night's Watch who saluted with axes instead of spears, their broader blades better for hacking weirwood that twisted up from peat like bones. When the Queen's host swept onto the causeway, Robb rode to meet them, gray wind loping at his stirrup. Ned Stark rode in his son's train, face thawed from stoic frost by simple joy of return. Father and son clasped arms before Daenerys' eyes, wolves reunited under dragon banner. She felt Drogon's thrill above, sensed he too recognized the weight of oaths renewed. They convened high within the ruined tower, cunningly rebuilt by northern masons, stone fused with resinous pine planks. Maps draped over tables, inkpots trembling each time, earth shivered with distant thunder of horns along the tree line. Their plans merged. Dragonglass mines at Dragonstone shipping north by galleys through the White Knife to lands beyond Eastwatch. Supply caches along the King's Road flagged by Dothraki wind chimes, so riders could find them blind in blizzard. Ravens tasked on relay flights from Winterfell to King's Landing to Old Town, bearing coded runes of fire and snow. Jon Snow arrived 2 mornings later, riding hard with Tormund Giantsbane and a wedge of wildlings whose gaunt faces showed more suspicion of walls than of dragons. When Drogon swooped overhead, they lifted spears but did not flee. Jon's letter had not exaggerated the stakes. His face bore nights without sleep, beard rimed white. Inside the council, Jon spoke plainly. The wall no longer holds. Eastwatch fell last fortnight. Its stones became a stair for the dead. They crossed the shivering sea on ice floes. We saw giants among them. Skin thin as parchment, eyes blue as winter stars. Now, silence held the room until Garland Tyrell exhaled. Giants, he repeated, as though tasting an unfamiliar fruit. Well, that should simplify heraldry for them. Tormund laughed once. Harsh. They need no banners, Southron, only your bones for meal. Drogo's hand rested on Arakhaft, but Daenerys raised palm. Fire will stop them, she said. Dragons will. Jon met her gaze. Dragons, yes, but they are few, and the dead are beyond numbering. We will need every sword, every torch, every heart willing to stand while flesh freezes and shatters. Nender. Robb slapped table. The north stands. Riverlands march behind me. Karstark, Umber, Manderley, Glover. Their levies gather at Winterfell. Renly crossed arms. And the Reach will send green boys who have never seen snow. Still, better living archers than empty ramparts. We'll garrison at Deepwood Motte, Torrhen Square, Bear Island, wherever your roads allow. Stannis traced finger on map until it rested on the Skirling Pass. My fleet can sail around a hard home, landmen behind the enemy. A hammer from rear when your anvil holds at Winterfell. Medshi whined. Jon shook head. Hardhome is haunted by dead wind, but White Harbor landing within Manderley walls, then ferry by river to Long Lake, could flank them east. Arguments wove through frost-lit afternoon until strategy hardened. Daenerys would ride dragons to Winterfell to test flame against the Night King himself. Drogo's Khalasar would cover plains south of the last river, scouting and burning dozens of supply mounds ready for retreat. Jon and Robb would command joint host at the city, while Renly's spears guarded Moat Cailin against any Southron opportunists. Stannis would sail and hold the flank by the coast, his galleys offering refuge if ice forced withdrawal toward the sea. Before they parted, Daenerys placed a hand on Jon's forearm. The realm owes you warning, she said. And I owe you flame. We fly tomorrow at dawn. Jon nodded. Then I'll ready the skies. He bent to whisper to Ghost, who stood beneath the table licking meltwater from flagstones, ears twitching at the crackle of pages. When dawn split clouds like a knife, Daenerys climbed Drogon's broad back from a ramp built into the tower. Snow dusted her pauldrons. She wore no crown, only a simple leather cap strapped beneath chin and fingerless gloves stitched by Northwomen with direwolf pattern. Drogon rumbled impatient as Rhaegal and Viserion took wind. She looked down at Drogo standing by the edge. The Khal raised his fist. She felt the silent vow. He would guard their unborn child with every drop of blood until she returned. Wind whipped her cheeks as Drogon climbed. The river delta shrank to silver ribbons. The host ants below raised spear points that glittered. Above clouds the sun threw a pale disk, weak but still bright. The dragons banked north, wings scything mist. Frost crystals formed along Drogon's spine ridges, then swept away in vortices. She glanced at Rhaegal. Green wings darkened with rime at edges, and recalled tales of Meraxes wheeling above the field of fire. But Meraxes had never faced foes already dead. Hours later the wall rose on horizon, blue-white immensity, though the central span sagged under collapsed towers. Smoke spidered from Eastwatch's ruins. The dragons descended in slow spirals toward Castle Black, where black cloaks waved torches in the courtyard, signals of welcome. Jon stood atop the Lord Commander's tower when she alighted. His dark hair blew across eyes still ringed shadow. "You feel it?" he asked softly. She did. A chill not born of air, but of something older, watching, measuring. It pressed against her mind like a cold fingertip testing if she were glass. Drogon hissed, neck spines bristling. Somewhere east, beyond a line of pines silhouetted against overcast sky, a horn sounded, deep, mournful. Thrice. Jon's face drained. "They're here." Night fell quick and heavy. Camps along the southern face of the wall lit torches by the thousand, sputtering in rising gale. Unsullied manned ramparts beside wildling archers, whose eaglebone whistles counted heartbeats until arrows loosed. Dothraki rode patrol just beyond the shadow. Songs replaced by silence. In the Queen's Tower Daenerys paced. Maester Samwell, cheeks red from wind, poured steaming goat's milk laced with cinnamon for her. "Drink," he urged. "For the babe." She sipped and tasted fear disguised as spice. Flames in hearth barely warmed the flagstones. Snow rattled glass panes like claws. A horn blared. The gatehouse shook with footfalls. Grey Worm burst in, spear dripping black ichor. "Khaleesi," he said, voice tight. "Dead attack south ladder." Fire slows but not stops. She strode past him, down icy steps, across yard where drifts reached thigh-high. Drogon crouched anxious near the old bear's memorial weirwood. She mounted without saddle, felt scales bite through cloak. "Open gate," she ordered. Ser Barristan's protest froze in his throat. The portcullis clanked up. Cold wind howled. Drogon exploded through, wings hammering air. They rose above outer palisade just as white surged like rotted surf, blue eyes luminous. Rhaegal and Viserion joined her. She drew breath and shouted, "Drakari!" Twin torrents of orange and green fire carved trenches through undead ranks. Snow flash boiled, sending white steam pillars twisting skyward. Charred corpses collapsed in heaps, melting into slush. Yet the tide did not cease. Where one line burned away, three more climbed over, their ice-crusted chainmail rattling. Far behind them, she saw giants, a pair, maybe more, looming silhouettes crowned in ice horns, each carrying tree trunks as clubs. Then she saw him, astride a necrotic horse whose hooves left no print, cloak of mist swirling, a figure of spindled armor reflecting moon shards. The Night King raised pale hand. Spears fashioned from gleaming ice rose among his guard. Drogon beat wings, turning. Rhaegal dove, jaws opening. An ice spear hurtled upward. It struck Rhaegal's left wing joint, scales sheared. Dragon blood like liquid emerald sprayed. Rhaegal shrieked but stayed aloft, veering behind the wall toward safety. Daenerys' heart seized. She pressed against Drogon's neck. "Fire," she whispered. They stooped into a killing plunge. Drogon's blaze flared hotter than forge core, engulfing the Night King's vanguard. Skeletons burst in showers of ash. But the Night King himself twisted aside faster than flesh should move. Flame licked his cloak, but faded like wind-blown lamp. Another spear formed in his hand, ice curling outward in growing spiral. He hurled. Drogon banked. The spear grazed his flank, slicing scale to reveal crimson. The dragon roared fury. Daenerys held fast, knees clamping. A thought flickered. If Drogon fell, both mother and child die, leaving realm bereft. She grit teeth, whispered in Valyrian calming cadences. Drogon leveled flight. Below, Unsullied advanced behind shield wall, torches jutting over rims, thrusting dragonglass pikes. Wildling slingers flung clay pots of wildfire which exploded in green blossoms. The giants blundered through one such burst, armor melting to pit holes where flame touched. Yet they still swung clubs, crushing men into frozen paste. Jon joined the fray on foot, long claw-hacking radiant arcs. Tormund rallied wildlings with curses that steamed in cold. Ghost leapt among whites, tearing sinew that tasted of nothing. Daenerys returned her gaze to the Night King. He stood now amid dead ash, blue eyes locked on hers, across swirls of snow. She felt his will pressing, cold fingers brushing mind, seeking to bend the dragon's fierce heat. Drogon shivered. She felt him waver. "Fly," she told him. "Climb, my son." They shot skyward through roiling clouds until castle lights became pinpricks. Up here, the temperature knifed. She steadied breath, then angled into steep dive behind Night King's left flank. Viserion mirrored opposite side. Twin jets of flame surged, one red gold, one pale gold, enclosing the enemy in crossing torrents. The Night King vanished in glare. When light faded, he was gone, only a pool of blackened snow. But doubt scraped at her. Those flames had not roared with full hunger, as though drawn out by unseen force. Below, the dead host reeled yet did not rout. They flowed around fire like water circumventing rock, regrouping toward a breach in the wall's lesser section further east, where ice-weakened masonry remained unmended. Daenerys spotted their intent. She wheeled Drogon. 3 nights of siege followed. Each dusk the dead pressed new assaults. Each dawn the living counted corpses redying in smoldering heaps. Supplies dwindled, water froze in skins faster than men could thaw. Rhaegal healed slowly, unable to fly. He crouched within a ring of braziers, wings splinted with oak braces wrapped in sheepskin. Viserion scouted high but scarce slept. Drogon's wounds oozed blackened blood, turned tar-thick in cold. Inside the ramparts, Daenerys convened last council. Jon's brow furrowed. "They will come again, at moon's rise," he said. "Stronger than before. We must lure the Night King within reach of dragonfire, or kill him with dragonglass ourselves." Samwell shuffled parchment. Tick. Legends claim the Night King's heart is ice that breathes storm. Fire may not be enough, unless it is the fire inside Valyrian steel. "Ben? Or inside life yet unborn," Daenerys murmured, palm on belly. They stared at her. She explained dream visions the Red Priestess Melisandre had sent by Raven, a child of dragon and stallion crowned by living flame, breath hot enough to melt shadow. Melisandre claims the babe's birth will break winter's spine. She finished. Drogo grunted. "Then protect mother until birth. Strike after. Time favors dead." Stannis snapped. "Walls crumble while we wait. I'll not watch my men freeze hoping for prophecy." Besunchawa. Voices rose like clashing sword edges until Ned Stark spoke, calm as falling snow. "He wants memory of man erased," he said. "That is his hunger. But memory is not only breath and lungs. It rides bloodlines. A babe yet unseen is promise he cannot abide. The Night King hunts Daenerys, not our walls." Silence pooled. Daenerys felt a chill spider along spine. Jon inhaled. "Use me as bait," he said. "I share her blood. Let the Night King think victory lies in taking me. Lure him to Godswood where the heart tree roots hide wildfire caches. A trap." Da. Daenerys shook head. "Too great a risk." Jon's eyes burned violet in torchlight, Targaryen flicker. "Great risk is our only coin left." They argued until dawn bled pale behind ridgeline. In the end, plan formed. Jon would ride east under false envoy flag. claimed to parley surrender. Tyrion suggested a letter forged in Daenerys' hand. Promise of dragon unborn if the Night King met alone under weirwood boughs near Dead Man's Lake, called Mirror Mere. Beneath that grove wildfire trenches would wait, disguised under snow while unsullied archers lined edges with dragonglass arrows. Daenerys sealed plan with drop of blood from her finger. She pressed the wax, then kissed Jon's brow. "I will come when sky ignites," she whispered. He nodded once, gray eyes reflecting flames. The parley site sat half a league south of the ruined night fort. Mirror, namesake water lay mirror no more. Ice cloaked it, thick enough to bear horses. A lone weirwood leaned its shoreline, its face cracked by centuries of frost. Jon approached on pale mare, carrying peace banners stitched from torn cloak of slain white. Snow fell gently, each flake lazy. He studied shadows. Nothing moved. Then they came, silent columns, whites in tattered mail. They parted for their king whose footsteps left frost flowers on air itself. The Night King halted 20 paces away, eyes boring. Jon dismounted, hand on Longclaw's hilt. "The Queen offers truce," he said, voice steady. "The child she carries may stand with fire or be stilled by cold. She would parley life for peace." No response. The Night King lifted one hand, slowly, as though curious. Jon sensed chill seep into marrow. Atop ridge unsullied archers waited, bows drawn. Torchbearers at hidden trenches glanced to Ghost, crouched near treeline. When Wolf howled, torches would drop. The Night King advanced. Jon felt time dilate. 10 paces. 7 Tamasor. He tightened grip. A howl pierced sky. Coast. Torches flared and plunged. For instant wildfire remained dark, then roared upward in emerald lattice. The Night King whipped head. Reflection of flames danced on icy armor. Humans not caught in blaze, for unsullied trenches curved to spare Jon. Whites within radius ignited, collapsing noiselessly. Yet the Night King stood untouched. He raised arms. Blue lightning crackled across Ice Lake. Cracks formed in wildfire layer. Snuffing patches where the green flame met supernatural chill. Smoke billowed. From above came thunder. Drogon diving. Viserion flanking. Daenerys leaned forward, lips shaping prayer. Drogon's maw opened wide. Flame blossoming hotter than any before. Swirling core of white within orange. A dragon's furnace unleashed. The torrent met the Night King. For first time he recoiled, armor glowing red. Frost cloak vanishing to vapor. Ice spear, half formed in his hand, melted to puddle before it could shape. He staggered. Yet he did not fall. Daenerys cried out, urging Drogon closer. The dragon's flame narrowed to lance. Jon charged through scattering embers, Longclaw high. He leapt, blade tracing circle toward enemy's exposed neck. Steel met flesh that felt more quartz than skin. A crack like glacier calving split air. Blue light burst from wound. The Night King clutched throat. But his eyes met Daenerys one last time, and within them she glimpsed galaxies of winter storms swirling. Rage, sorrow, hunger for warmth he could never feel. Then he shattered, shards spinning skyward in spiral of glittering frost. They hung suspended an instant, catching Dragonfire's glare like diamonds, then fell, melted before touching ground. Across battlefield every white froze mid-stride and toppled into snow, limbs shattering. Giants crumbled to heaps of petrified bone. Silence swept forest, vast as sky. Rhaegal's shrill call pierced hush, answering with triumph. Drogon landed beside Jon, wings folding. Daenerys slid down, boots crunching. Jon kneeled, panting. She took his hands, both steaming. "Is it done?" he whispered. She looked around. No twitch of movement among dead, only falling snow thick with ash. "For now," she said. "Winter yet remains, but its heart is broken." He nodded. "Then let's see dawn together." The host celebrated at Winterfell. Fires blazed from every chimney, ale flowed like spring thaw. Wildlings danced with Northmen to Dothraki drums. Children chased Rhaegal's soaring silhouette beyond towers, convinced it painted colors on clouds. In the Godswood, Daenerys walked with Ned Stark among ancient oaks heavy with snow. Red leaves lay like blood drops upon white. Ned spoke of old kings who burned winter kings on weirwood pyres to end long night. Perhaps, he said quietly, the gods simply waited for you. She knelt before Hearttree, whispering thanks. Barkface watched with mouth open in silent scream still, yet its eyes seemed softer. Later, at banquet in Great Hall, Robb Stark lifted a horn. To the Mother of Flame, he called. Voices echoed. Tyrion slid beside Daenerys. I've drawn preliminary charters, he said, patting scroll case. The North remains autonomous. Stormlands under Renly and vassal alliance. Riverlands a buffer. Trade routes through neck taxed minimally. Wolf's Toll, they're calling it, half price for sheep. Double for Lannister wine, just to irk your former foes. And now, she smiled. And what of the Ironborn? Yara Greyjoy pledged ships to patrol East Coast against Dornish pirates, hoping to plunder salvage. She asks only recognition of her right to rule the Iron Islands free of wrath from men who cannot hold nets without gloves. He shrugged. Seemed fair, salt wives and all. Music swelled. Harp, drum, pipes. Jon led Daenerys to High Table's center where she could see the whole hall. Her child kicked. She pressed Jon's palm there. His eyes widened. A dragon? He asked. Or a wolf? She answered. Or both, he said. Grin, thawing lines of war. Across Khal Drogo toasted with Tormund. Each boasting of giants fell. Grey Worm sat with Missandei, teaching her Dothraki words for Snowflake. Ser Barristan shared quiet counsel with Garland Tyrell about rebuilding northern keeps. Daenerys looked at banners hung. Direwolf beside dragon, stag beside rose. Fire and ice stitched at every seam in new tapestry. But far south, on the Isle of Faces, green men stirred from dreaming. They felt tremor run through roots where weirwoods drank lingering memory of ancient white eyes. Beyond stepstones, a storm brewed tinted deep purple, unnatural. In the far shadows of Valyria, forgotten creatures stirred to dragonfire's renewed scent. The realm's dawn had come, yes, but dawn only heralds more days, and days carried both harvest and tempest. Daenerys touched the rim of her goblet, hearing wind whisper through broken wall, across emptied wild valley, over still smoldering pyres. She raised cup and drank. 9 months later, on a midsummer morning that smelled of moss and new river, the queen labored in Winterfell's solar while snowmelt waterfalls boomed outside. Maester Samwell attended, hands steady. Drogon perched upon broad wall, eyes glowing molten, as though reflecting her agony. Jon paced, sword rhythmic against scabbard. With sunrise the babe emerged, hair dark like father's, eyes violet like mother's. When lungs met air, a gasp of steam blossomed, and hearth flames flared higher, though no one tended them. Samwell started. Jon laughed. Daenerys wept. They named him Aemon Rhaego Snow. Aemon for wisdom, Rhaego for stallion promise, snow for land that birthed future. Wolves howled from battlements. Dragons answered far above. That night, under sky clear as obsidian glass, Jon carried sun before Hearttree. He and Daenerys spoke vows older than kingdoms. Pledge of guardianship for north and south, for fire and ice. The tree did not speak, yet leaves rustled though wind lay still. From vantage atop highest tower, Tyrion watched lights flicker across courtyard. He sipped arbor gold and mused. To think the realm once feared dragons. They should have feared boredom. Then he smiled, for there would be none of that in years to come. Down in Godswood, Daenerys felt tiny heartbeat against her chest. She looked toward distant mountains, where snow still capped peaks despite summer warmth, and beyond them to oceans whose waves glittered silver. The babe stirred. She whispered, "You will fly those skies, little dragon, little wolf. The world will be wide and I will teach you to love it." Above, Drogon unfurled wings, casting wide shadow across courtyard and leaf. In that moment, shadow and sun merged, forging silhouette of future promise etched upon castle stones. So ended one chapter of fire and blood. But not the story, for stories are rivers that bend and join and forever run. And though winter's heart lay broken, embers of new storms already glowed beyond horizons. Yet for now, the land breathed. Fields thawed. Children laughed beneath unfallen snow. And dragons roamed free under banners, no longer separate. Their circles writ across morning light, like signatures of hope.